special edition of Meet the Press with Chuck Todd.
Good Sunday morning and a happy New Year's weekend to everyone. This morning we're going to do something that we don't often get to do. Dive in on one topic. It's obviously extraordinarily difficult to do this, as the end of this year has proven in the era of Trump.
Man, are you losing your hair.
But we're going to take an in-depth look, regardless of that, at a literally earth-changing subject that doesn't get talked about this thoroughly on television news, at least, climate change. But just as important as what we are going to do this hour is what we're not going to do. We're not going to debate climate change, the existence of it.
What?
The earth is getting hotter, and human activity is a major cause, period. We're
Fascist.
not going to give time to climate deniers. The science is settled, even if political opinion is not. And we're not going to confuse weather with climate. A heat wave is no more evidence that climate change exists than a blizzard means that it doesn't, unless the blizzard hits Miami.
So there is no evidence that we can experience that proves their hypothesis wrong. Look at the position that they are in. No matter what we experience, no matter what data we present, no matter what the future holds, they are right. This is fascism. This is dictatorship. This is tyranny. That's what that is, right there. Because actual science doesn't matter. It's about their intent and their agenda. That should frighten each and every one of you. That is unbelievable. I pulled up while he was talking, just what's happened here in Chicago, and it doesn't matter. The fact that in 1967, our record low was 24 degrees in January, and the fact that in 1950, our record high was 67. The data doesn't matter because what he's selling you is a lie. So only his interpretation of reality matters. That's what a fascist is. That's what a communist is, by the way. It's not about what you're really living. It's about what they tell you you're living. So your experience, your individuality means nothing to them. And that's the difference in philosophies. One holds most important the individual's rights. The other, that's the least important. But it's the group's agenda that is most important. This is what you're living. So the reality is when these people, who is an expert in nothing, the only thing Chuck Todd's an expert at is living through college years as a virgin. If I want to know how to do that, I'll ask this walking Q-tip. Otherwise, he's an expert in nothing. He's not half the man any of you are. He just has the job that makes him look like it. But what America used to be is that it didn't matter what fascists like this thought. It didn't matter if he could convince a senator or a congressman. It didn't matter because you had unalienable rights. You don't anymore. And the agenda is this absolute onslaught on your individual rights will happen. You will be J.B. Pritzker into penalized for life, for living. That's what global warming does. It makes you guilty because you live. It makes you a servant because only government and the agenda of the enlightened allows you to partake in certain things, whether it's driving if you can't pay the gas tax, whether it's farming if you're going to have so many head and then you have to pay because they're farting and we decided that's bad for green energy. It's ridiculous, but it works. And it works because he said we're not even going to entertain the opposite view. Well, how could you not entertain the opposite view? Let's go to Bob. Bob in Buffalo Grove.
Thanks for taking my call, Sean.
Thank you.
I just wanted to point out the fact that you tied this to fascism. There's a very famous quote. You've probably heard it. I've got it in front of me so I don't misread it.
No, give it to me.
If you tell the lie big enough and keep on repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers, they probably all should have put in their media, to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. Do you know who said that?
Man, oh man. My knee-jerk reaction is Churchill, but I think it's got to be older. But go ahead, you tell me.
Joseph Goebbels.
That's exactly right. I love it. I love it. Not
And
too
then-
much of a
then
pig
there's
farmer, but a
another
hell of a
one.
Nazi. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another one that I hate to bring up his name, but how fortunate for governments that the people they govern don't think.
Yeah. It's incredible. And you want to know something, Bob, that I find fascinating about this whole thing is when I heard him say the data doesn't matter. The reality of what we're living, the facts. So in other words, this is how they get around the fact that for 60 years they've been 100% wrong. 60 years of wrong conclusions. They've been
Nobody's
telling me
listening.
since I was a kid, and it not only are they wrong, they're 180 degrees wrong. Exactly the opposite of what they predict happens. It's amazing.
The one thing I always like to nobody ever raises the question. You know that Illinois, Chicago, 25,000 years ago, was under ice.
Yeah.
What caused that ice to disappear? And are those factors in play right now?
Absolutely.
And I can't get an answer.
Because the data that they want to use doesn't fit. Your facts doesn't fit their hypothesis. They only want data that fits it. Yours is irrelevant. That's what Chuck Todd is telling you. In fact, what he's telling you is our reality is irrelevant. The fact that they have been wrong since the 60s is irrelevant. So instead of us being outraged at all of the waste, all of the things that it's cost us that are almost immeasurable, instead of us being outraged, we're back against the ropes again. And you know what else?
And
Go ahead.
You know the other thing too. The infamous 97% of the scientists agree.
Well, so it's funny you said that
number.
It's funny you said that.
What?
So what happened last year is we lost a true warrior, and we lost a genius, a scientist, the man who founded the Weather Channel, John Coleman.
Yes.
You know, we're in Chicago. We grew up, for the most part, I did, with John Coleman, and you forget that he was such an entertaining weather guy. This is before we needed Cheryl Scott to show us her miniskirt. This is when we wanted actual people of knowledge and experts in the field. The idea that Brant Miller is an expert and controls Channel 5, it's ridiculous to me. But we had this guy who was such a genius. He actually saw the need for a 24-hour monitoring of our nation's weather, and he's the actual founder of the Weather Channel. And a victim of eminent domain. The government took it from him. They gave him a payout that they've deemed was worthy, and they stole the Weather Channel from him. Not a lot of people talked about that. But they don't talk about his perspective on global warming. So you know what I did, Bob? Bob, I can't play the clip and have you on the line, but thank you so much for calling. I'm going to play the clip of John Coleman. Thank you. What they did is they made the mistake, and this is on CNN. This is 5 months before John Coleman died, who was well into his 80s. I want you to hear what he thinks about this lie, and it is a lie, called global warming.
I resent you calling me a denier. That is a word meant to put me down. I'm a skeptic about climate change, and I want to make it darn clear, Mr. Kenny's not a scientist. I am. He's the CEO of the Weather Channel now. I was the founder of the Weather Channel, not the co-founder.
And I'm glad you did, because I am addicted to the Weather Channel. I watch a lot of cable news.
Now, hold on just a minute. I'm not done. And CNN has taken a very strong position on global warming that it is a consensus. Well, there is no consensus in science. Science isn't a vote. Science is about facts. And if you get down to the hard, cold facts, there's no question about it. Climate change is not happening. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future. There's a whole lot of baloney, and yes, it has become a big political point of the Democratic Party and part of their platform, and I regret it's become political instead of scientific. But the science is on my side.
I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion about the topic right here. What I do wonder,
though,
is when you see
because you wouldn't allow it to happen on CNN. But I'm happy that I got on the air and got a chance to talk to your viewers. Hello, everybody. There is no global warming.
What I do wonder is when you see the government, when you see NASA, when you see other institutions say that 97% of climate scientists agree, do you think they're making it up? What I don't understand is how you square that.
Well, that's a manipulated figure, and let me explain it to you. The government puts out about $2.5 billion directly for climate research every year.
$2.5 billion.
It only gives that money to scientists who will produce scientific results that support the global warming hypothesis of the Democrat Party position. So they don't have any choice. If you're going to get the money, you got to support their position. Therefore, 97% of the scientific reports published support global warming.
They're paid
Why?
for science.
Because those are the ones the government pays for, and that's where the money is. It's real simple. But that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't make it true. That only makes it bought and paid for. The money goes in circles.
I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to try to refute you
Well,
on the
that's the
facts.
truth.
I'll simply say that the vast
please stand
majority.
back from this issue and let the two sides be on the air. There are 31,000 scientists who have signed a petition that says it is not valid, that my position is correct.
But if you control the narrative, those 31,000 scientists, the opposite views don't matter. If you're a fascist, if you're a dictator, if you're a profiteer from the lie, you do not want the opposite information out there. That is what Chuck Todd, the sexually frustrated dweeb, that's what he is. And that's what he wants, because that's the world he lives in. The world of the enlightened, controlling you idiots who want your own opinion, who value your own rights, who don't want to be sheep or slaves. This is just the favorite agenda of the Nazi, of the fascist, of the dictator. There are many others. But this is the formula that makes him a god, keeps him in power, and makes you a slave. Why on earth would you have no questions about anything, for that matter? Whether it's the Syria issue where we've been clearly on the wrong side. Whether it's global warming fraud that makes you a slave because you live. Or whether it's economic tyranny that keeps you an earner to pay off other people's debt. And they call it redistribution of wealth. It's redistribution of poverty. And unless you're uber rich, you're on the losing end of that stick. And the idea that you somehow benefit because, oh, your kid goes to public school. This is what they're teaching your kid in public school. So you're paying for your kid to be controlled, to be ruled, to be given false information so that he is forever a slave. And that's what we parents witness. I pay. I don't send my kids to public school. I pay for their education. And this is what the best of the schools in Illinois, they teach them the same shit, the same lie, the same belief structure. Don't question authority. Take information, even though it's controlled and bought for data. And why is that? Why is that they don't want an opposing view? And the answer is because it exposes them. Like every other instance in life. What do you mean you're not? Look at everything. Be suspicious with everything. And this is why it's more important to keep an eye on our own party. The Democrat Soviet is what he is. Chuck Todd was a lackey for a congressperson before he got, that's how he got the job, by the way. You think if he wasn't interwoven in the clout-ridden political arena of entertainment TV, which is what news is, that he'd be actually on a Sunday show? He's a balding, white, less than attractive male with zero expertise in anything. Why does he have the job? Why? And that's because he spews their agenda. He guarantees their propaganda. Bob from Buffalo Grove, Goebbels, I should have guessed it, because what was Goebbels but the propaganda minister? Goebbels was the one who orchestrated the entire rising of the Third Reich through propaganda. And the difference between Goebbels and Chuck Todd is about 4 inches, and that's it. It's ridiculous. And until we, as so-called Republicans, reject it from our own people, it's going to get worse because you can't beat the onslaught of the communist who's really telling you he's a socialist while pretending to be Democrats. So it's funny. Back to one of my favorite callers, Furlan. What's killing America? American naivete. And the fact that we're all too lazy to be involved and that we're too timid to reject the lies because you don't want to look stupid by questioning the so-called experts. They're experts in nothing except how to stand for nothing, how to have no principles, and how to become very important in a job. That's what these guys are good at. That's all he's good at. My only hope is that Chuck Todd's wife is fondling the doorman at his very expensive multi-million-dollar Manhattan condo that he shouldn't be living in. Listen, I've had a good time. First show back. Here's the thing. So Liberty is not just the name of the Liberty Hour. It's not just the name of the Liberty Hour podcast. It's the name of my real estate company, and it's Liberty Real Estate Services. And what I have decided to do, my New Year's resolution, is to help all the people of Illinois by becoming more functional, more important, and more useful to them in Liberty Real Estate Services. I've gone to South Florida 3 years ago. I opened up out there. And what I was doing is I was facilitating people who were leaving Illinois and retiring, and they were buying and they were living in their homes. Well, there's another side of real estate that is important for those my age who are maybe a little too young to retire, who don't have the means to retire, who don't have one of these mystical, magical municipal pensions where they're going to sit on their ass and pretend they made $4 million in their life and invested it wisely. But for us, there are options. And what are those options? And it's investing in South Florida real estate. Now, what are the problems when you invest in South Florida real estate? Well, what I was encountering for 3 years is people are like, okay, you sell me this magnificent condo, you sell me this house, you sell me this townhouse, and then what? Now I've got to go through the tab. I don't have time to manage it. I don't know how to do Airbnb. I don't want to deal with leases. And, I would be like, well, listen, I'm one guy going back and forth. I'm trying to work for, 70 hours a week. And half of that's travel. So I can't do everything. Well, what I made a decision to do late last year is to expand Liberty Real Estate Services. So I've hired a few people. I'm going down. We bought a bunch of management software. We've actually got, there's this cool stuff. It's software where you can actually automate the home. We take every house and make it a smart house that monitors everything. We've gone hardcore into Airbnb and VRBO. I've got an infrastructure that I've put together over the last 6 months. So I'm going to expand Liberty Real Estate Services in South Florida. I'm going to be spending a lot more time there. So the reason I led you down this path is because I want to apologize. It doesn't look like next week's, and this is my first day back after 2 weeks off, next week's podcasts on Tuesday and Wednesday are going to happen. But I had an important meeting with management this morning. I got here a little early, and they are so kind to me. The people at 560 AM, I just love them, and they've looked out for me and given me this opportunity. There's a murmur, and I don't know if you're supposed to say this, but I'm not really in the radio business too much. There's a murmur that the Liberty Hour podcast in the next couple of months will be from 7 to 8 at night, which will allow me to do it when I'm in Florida. So stay tuned, as they say, and we'll also be back on Sunday nights during the regular Liberty Hour with my trusty sidekick, Macbeth, whose head is really bigger than you'd think. And that's Sundays from 8 to 9 right here, terrestrial radio on AM 560, The Answer. And otherwise, I'm going to launch this on the Facebook and leave a note or a comment, because if you like it, it's good for me. And I want to thank you so much for listening. And thank you for tuning in. And thank you for understanding. It's not about Republicans and Democrats. It's about freedom versus slavery. It's about representation versus tyranny. I want the America we were promised. I want what our ancestors fought for. It's not Democrat and Republican. It's you're either free with unalienable rights or you're a slave with a good slave master. I don't want that. We'll be back Sunday night, 8 to 9. Thank you so much for listening. I like you.